Without further ado, I'm going to introduce my good friend, my real estate coach, um, basically top agent, team leader, has done a number of roles. And as you see on here, what I love the most about Jordan is 10,000 hours of coaching elite real estate professionals across the country. So in doing that, he's obviously learned a number of very specific skills to take agents to the next level, including myself. So, Jordan, welcome. Thank you for joining the Pulse Nation, and we're glad to have you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm glad to be here. I've heard a lot about Pulse, obviously, over the years, and I'm excited to finally get to share with everybody. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so am I. So Jordan, we're talking about absolute clarity, and I know me and you were just on a phone call a few days ago, in fact, talking about the struggle with that word clarity. So what does absolute clarity mean to you? Like what does that mean when I say those words?
I honestly, Brendan, where I go first is I think absolute clarity is the starting point for activating your potential. And when we talk about potential, right, potential is simply latent forces. So we all have these latent or dormant forces that lie within us. And many of us have expressed this over the years. I know that I could do more. I know that I am meant for more. So that very phrase is the acknowledgement of latent forces of potential, right? And so I'm very much, as you know, somebody that likes to take ideas and pull them out of the clouds and put them into the dirt. And so when we talk about the activation of potential, right, most coaches or trainers, authors, or whatever, they're just kind of leave you there, like activate your potential. It's like, great. If I knew how to do that, I would have already done it. And so what I've discovered, Brendan, in all the coaching calls and good relationships that I've developed over the years is that activating potential has 4 steps. And so I'm going to give these to you. I would invite everybody to grab your pen, whatever it is that you're writing with. And when we talk about activating potential, it starts with clarity. And see, I don't believe that people inherently lack drive. I don't think that some people were born with the drive DNA or the drive gene, right? I do believe though that people lack clarity. And so the question is never to me, how do I motivate this person? How do I get this person to show up as a driven individual? My question is first, what is it that you're not clear on that if you were, I would pull the best version of you out of you? So it starts with clarity. And so when you're clear, and we're going to come back to that in a second, you activate the second force of potential, which is certainty. Certainty is the antithesis of doubt. It is the opposite of doubt. It is that ability to know in your heart that what you're going to achieve is just a matter of time. It's not if, it's when, right? And there's a question that I like to ask people about this, Brendan, and it's kind of a long question. As you know, I like to pontificate sometimes, but I'm going to ask this question. And I want each and every one of you to write it down because this is something that you're going to want to take into your circles. And then I want you to answer it. And if you're really with me today, I want you to put it in the chat box. Here's the question. Tell me about a time that you wanted something. I mean, you wanted it bad. Tell me about a time that you wanted something. I mean, you wanted it bad. And you had no earthly idea how you were going to get it. And you had no earthly idea how you were going to get it. In fact, it seemed impossible. It seemed impossible. But you knew in your heart you would, and you did. So tell me about a time that you wanted something. I mean, you wanted it bad. And you had no earthly idea how you were going to get it. In fact, it seemed impossible, but you knew in your heart that you would, and you did. My first house. Thank you, Ernest. Breaking free of my corporate job and starting to work for myself. See, when you step into that space, right? What I'm looking for in coaching people, number one, is how do they activate these forces of certainty within themselves. And typically, it's done through what we call first creation, second creation. You got vividly clear on what it was that you wanted. My first house. You got vividly clear on what it was you wanted, getting out of my corporate job. And see, then you step into the world in this energy of certainty. I am going to do this, right? And I think that most people, Brendan, they approach their goals in one of two energies. There's the energy of longing. The energy of longing is kind of like begging. I really hope I get it. It would be nice. That would be so great. And then there's the energy of knowing. I know in my head and my heart that this thing is mine. It is real. It's just coming to pass. And see, when you have somebody who shows up in the world with absolute certainty, they behave differently than those who do not or are constantly riddled with doubt. And see, when you're certain, you activate the third force, which is courage. Courage. It's not the absence of fear, it's the ability to act in spite of it. And just like you teach, and you're one of the most consistent people that I know, the fourth force that you activate is the force of consistency. That you consistently show up because quality long-term results require quality long-term focus. And so, Brendan, that's what I think about with absolute clarity first, is I think about the four forces of activating potential, which are clarity, certainty, courage, and consistency.
And Jordan, what I think sometimes the people struggle with is they're trying to find why they're always asking me the question, I just struggle with being consistent. And I'm like, well, are you clear on what you want? Because if you're not clear on what you want, what's the point of being consistent? Then it just sounds
Yeah.
like you're working at a coal mine every day, right? You just show up, dig coal, come home, drink a Coors Banquet, go to bed, do it again, right?
Yeah.
That's a life. I don't know if it's living, right? Like, but that could still be very consistent. But some people are just struggling with, of course, as we know, accountability, consistency, but all of that usually comes from when I see these two words on here that jump out to me, clarity and courage. That seems to be the biggest hangup.
Yeah. And I think one thing, Brendan, that we live in a digital deluge of distraction, unlike any time in history. And so the question that I like to ask people is, how many finish lines are you running for? Like you and I like to talk about sports every now and then. You don't like to bring it up so much because you're a Broncos fan and I'm a Chiefs fan, and we all know how that's gone over the last 5 years. And yet, if you want to know sorry, Brendan, I had to say that. If you want to know one of the greatest documentaries that you could ever watch on consistency, clarity, leadership, the activation of potential, it is The Last Dance on Netflix about Michael Jordan. And if you listen to him talk, he only ever has one goal. It's to win the championship, right? He wants to win the championship that year. You used to have a question like this, Brendan, that I thought was really brilliant. You said it to me in front of a mastermind one time, and you asked the question, what's your Everest? You remember that?
Oh,
What's
yeah.
your Everest? You didn't say, what's your Everest, right?
Yeah, it wasn't plural.
Right. Michael Jordan wasn't trying to win championships. It was a championship. It was one goal, because when you activate one goal, now you put all your focus on that goal. And see, here's what I've come to find is that focus equals feeling, feeling equals finding. And we riddle ourselves with so many different targets, so many different finish lines. And so then we behave like a pinball, not a golf ball. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
It's the
so,
struggle. It's the struggle constantly. I mean, there is we are as entrepreneurs or realtors or individual, business owners, I think we look at it sometimes and we get so distracted that we've got to do social media, we have to do this, everyone else is doing something different than me, better than me, all of this, and it gets overwhelming. And I think that's why people, they either get stuck in average or they just tap out and go, I'd rather have somebody just tell me what to do and where to be. And that way I can just make a decent wage. I see it all the time.
Yeah, people will trade unhappiness for certainty. They do it every day.
Correct. Correct. So, Jordan, what I'm excited about is as we break into our mid-year reset, right? You happen to also coach and are great friends with Jay Papasan, who wrote the book The One Thing,
Yeah.
and this mythology, right? I mean, now taking the four C's and kind of putting that into a structure for the next 6 months. Now that we're through the first 6 months, everyone, you are going to need some pen and paper, especially for this. We're going to give you the document and you can do it with a clean version later, but we're going to go through an exercise because it is halfway point in the year where we need to get super clear on dialing in what Jordan just took us through, which is getting that certainty, making sure we're aligned on what we want, and then having the courage to attack it this next 6 months. So me and Jordan are going to take you through this exercise. And obviously, oh, I went to the wrong button there. There we go. So as we were saying, we're going to hit the reset button. Now, if you haven't read The One Thing, this comes directly from it. Add it to your book list. Obviously, it's extremely popular, best-selling book. And it's quite simple, really, Jordan, but it's simple and it's hard because it just comes down to a concept that it's Pareto's principle, right? What the main things that we focus on are going to produce, they say 80-20 rule. I think it's more like 95-5 rule, right? What we really dial in on is going to produce 95% of our results. But people struggle with this all the time, including me and you. And people think we're like, sometimes they're like, you hear us talking, they're like, oh, they got it all figured out. No, we're constantly fighting it all the time.
That's
Because
true.
when you get more successful, there's a lot of opportunities thrown your way, and it's hard to say no. It's
That's right.
really hard to say no. So let's jump into this concept. So I want you to write this down on your piece of paper. So we're going to do the mid-year reset, the one thing reset. So there's going to be 5 steps to this: reflect, evaluate, simplify, establish, and then of course time block, because without that it's going to be pointless. So, Jordan, let's start with this first concept: reflect on the past, decide your future. And I'll let you take our wonderful people through these couple questions and maybe give your insights to it.
Yeah. So, number one, I love this question. If the last 6 months were a movie, what are your favorite highlights? And so many of you are like me. Top performing people are like sophisticated home inspectors with their lives. We can always figure out what the next gap is, what's the big problem, what's the next obstacle. And what this first question kind of highlights is an exercise that I put my coaching clients through, and I've done this many times myself. It's like the reverse bucket list. And the reverse bucket list is, instead of all the amazing things that you're going to do, experience, see before you die, let's talk about what you've already done. And so that first question is your personal highlight reel from this year, because what many of you need to understand is that our culture is never satisfied. And we subscribe somehow to this belief. And I know, just in a group this size, probably 85 of you subscribe to this belief. And the belief is that I can become a winner talking to myself like a loser. You have an inner critic. You do not have an inner coach. You don't talk to yourself the way you would talk to someone you love. You don't coach yourself the way you would coach someone you love. And the personal highlight reel, the reason that this is important is that we want you to be clear on, where am I already winning? What am I already doing well? Because it is so hard to build off of failure. It's so much easier to build off of where you're already succeeding or where you're already winning. So the first question is all about your personal highlight reel, your reverse bucket list, whatever you want to call that. What did you want to have happen that did? See, what we're proving there is that you have the ability. And the ability that I talk about is that ability to pull something out of your head and put it into the real world. One of the things that I share with people often is that each and every one of us was born with a 3D printer. And if you've ever used a 3D printer, the way that it works is you sit in front of a computer and it has a software program in front of it, and you design whatever it is that you want to print, right? And you're going to have very specific pieces to this. So the color, the features, the weight, the height, all of these little things, you're going to get very intricate with that design. And so once you do that, then you hit print, it connects to the printer, and after a, period of time, depending upon what the project is, it's going to print out this thing in a exact feature to your design. And what I want you to understand is that each and every one of you have this program that's called your imagination. You have an imagination that you can 3D, you can design this goal of yours, this thing that you're after. And it's really hard to print something if you aren't clear on the design of it first. And then when you hold it in your head, and look, I don't care what you believe, where you think, what your religious beliefs are. Every great religion is all based upon one word: faith. Faith is loyalty to the unseen. And so your goal is to get so crystal clear. So think about it like this, this is the way I like to think about it. Imagine that if you had the rest of this year, right, and you wanted to be so clear on what it is that you wanted to achieve, and God called you up, and God said, "Hey, look, I'm going to give you an appointment next Tuesday. You get 2 hours, and I'm going to sit you down in front of the 3D printer that I use to create the world. This thing, like, you think Apple is cool? This is a cool system." So you go up there, right? And you've got 2 hours to design inside of God's 3D printer the goal, the achievement, the life that you want. I would imagine that if he gave you a week to prepare for that appointment, you would spend a lot of time getting what we brought you all here together around, which is absolute clarity. And so what we're talking about here is, first, what did happen that you wanted to have happen? Meaning, I want you to understand you're already living in this sequence of first creation, second creation. You're just not aware of it. And I want you to bring that into your awareness. And then secondly, what did you have happen that didn't? When we break that down, the first thing that I look to is, what was the intention behind that goal? When there's something that you say that you want and then you don't get it, I want you to explain to me what the intention of the goal was, because rotten intentions create rotten fruit. Sometimes you not getting what you want is exactly what you need. Let me give you an example. Imagine that this beautiful house in the middle of your town comes up for sale, and it's the house that everybody knows. It's beautiful. It's right there in the middle of town, right? And you have this guy who grew up in that town. Maybe he was a little bit short, had a little bit of the little man's disease, and he's gone into being an attorney. He's very successful, and he's going to buy that house because he wants everyone in town to know exactly how successful he is, that he is the man, right? So his goal is to buy that house. Now you have another couple, and this couple sees that house go up on the market, and they say, it would be really awesome because our parents are getting older. Our kids are, 10, 12 years old. They're going to be out on their own before we know it. It would be so cool if we bought that house, because then our parents could come stay with us for long seasons and really get to know their grandchildren. And we wouldn't feel like we were constantly in each other's space. Let's go buy that big house right in the middle of town. Now, do they have the same goal? Absolutely, to buy the big house in the middle of town. But one of them has a rotten intention, and he buys that house, and you know what? Nobody cares that he bought the house anyway. How long is it really going to give him what he wants? And so you understand the kind of moral of the story. When you're not getting something that you say you so earnestly want, I want you to dig into the intention. And is the intention something that is going to grow you? Is it going to strengthen you? Or is the intention something that ultimately is going to sacrifice you? Just like what's going to happen with him. That's a road led to and paved in disappointment. Does that make sense to everybody? So that section of it, I don't want that to be a browbeating section. I want you to be really clear about what was the intention of this goal. What happened that really matters. I'll give you something on this. I think that for many of us out here, myself included, gratitude does not come naturally to me. It's something that I have to practice. And a cool habit that our family got into about 6 or 7 years ago is we created the awesome jar. It's a big mason jar. It sits right there on our kitchen counter. It's always there. And every time something awesome happens, there's a little bag inside of it, has post-it notes and a pen. We just write it down and date it. And you know what's so cool is that when you get into this mode of resetting, you can go to your awesome jar. We've kept all the awesome things that have happened in this last 7 years in there. We've never taken any of them out. And we read them. And so you can look at what really mattered here. And the most beautiful part of all of that is how much of it I would have forgotten about. I wouldn't have remembered that. And so it's a question that I like to ask people. And you can use the word mattered. You can put blessings, whatever you want to call it. But what is your system for regularly counting and feeling your blessings?
Well, the
What is your
crazy part,
system?
Jordan, is especially in real estate, right? I remember when I had my first listing and then I had my first closing. And then after a while, you're like, you have a closing and you're not even thinking about that closing. You're on to the next three or the next two or the next one. And you're not celebrating. You don't take the time to have that moment. I remember like we would go out to dinner when I had a closing. Like it was an event. Like it was a big deal. And then you just kind of go, all right, been there, done that. And then closings don't seem so exciting. They seem more like a chore, which I know sounds crazy to some, but it just gets mundane because you're not refilling that jar. So I think that's a great example of, yeah, we are luckier than we think, but sometimes we're just not
Yeah.
recognizing it.
Many of you have a low credit score, meaning you give yourself no credit. And here's what I know about blessings. Um, if you don't take the time to count and feel your blessings, if you don't take the time to count and feel what matters, then you're no different than somebody who doesn't have those blessings. And I liken it to reading, meaning if I know how to read and don't, then I'm no different than somebody who can't. And if you struggle with this, like, oh, I don't really know what matters, I don't know how to count my blessings, cool. Here's a question for you. What are the blessings you would count and feel today if you knew that not counting and feeling them would cause them to disappear tomorrow? I think most of you would get real clear, right? My house. We take this for granted, right? We had a 6-inch rain in a 45-minute period of time yesterday and flooded our entire basement. Just boom, right? And so it's like I wasn't expressing gratitude for my basement every time I walked into it until now, right? I'm like, crap. So what happened that really matters, and how do you feel about this last 6 months? But here's the thing about um, I really want you to get this. The purpose of your goals is to create the best version of you. It's to bring the best out of you. And see, Jay Papazan is a good friend of mine. He's a coaching client of mine. I'm the head coach of Productive, which is the company that wrote The One Thing. I'm really into this book. And when you think about the place that you are with your goals, and the question that Jay has is, what is the relationship status you have with your goals? And if you think about it, like when you filled out a social media profile, you had a little drop down box, right? And it's like, as it relates to your goals, what's your relationship status? Are you single? Is it complicated? Is it long distance? Is it a passionate-ish, intimate relationship? But see, here's one thing that I've come to know, and I hope that many of you will take this away. Some of you are allergic to certain ideals that we hold as principles in our culture. Like one of them is that this idea of potential, right? And I've seen some people that when they think about living their potential, man, it activates something in them, and they go out into the world, and the pressure of that turns them into a diamond. I've seen other people that the pressure of their potential, they look at it as a mountain they can never summit, and it turns them into dust. And so we have this little girl that comes to our house. I have two daughters. They're 10 and 8. And this one little girl is good friends with my youngest daughter. And she has a very severe nut allergy. I mean, and it's serious. Like she has a little EpiPen, and every time I've seen her mom, she walks me through the steps, right? She can't have almond butter. She can't have no nuts, like nothing. It's very serious. Well, she didn't create that. She was born that way. And what I want you to understand is that some of you are just allergic to certain ideas. And if that goal isn't bringing the best out of you, if it's not printing the best version of you into the world, then you need to really stop and look at that. If it's constant anxiety, constant shame, you need to change the relationship that you have to the goal, the intention you have with the goal, or maybe the goal entirely. Does that make sense? So don't,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also think it's a lot of ego, right? Ego gets very involved in this, and it affects that relationship with the goal because we'll look at certain things and say, I don't need to do that because I've already made it thus far. And you see this with pro golfers, you see it with first round draft picks, you see it, right? I think it's something like that. I saw a stat the other day that only 32% of first round draft picks ever really made anything of themselves in the NFL. Like it's just crazy to think about. You were the best of the best in college, you had all this potential, and then you're not delivering because your relationship with your expectation of your goals is not aligned with where you want to be.
that's right.
And I think that's fascinating. So for time, and we could go on all day. We're going to go. So that's the first letter, which is the
Sorry.
R, reflect. No, they're loving it. The next one is the E. So we need to evaluate your priorities and pursue the right goals. So on this one, Jordan, take us through. And I tried to make it as big, and it kind of cuts me off, which is fine. I'll just poke down below here, right? But take us through the evaluate. What were your top 5 goals for 2024?
Yeah. And first, I wouldn't look at this as if it's a fill in the blank. Some of you may have only had two, some of you may have had one. You don't have to have had five. And yet, in the spirit of, centralizing your focus, more than five, and I've got to kind of wonder, like, how are you a pinball or are you a golf ball, right? And so let's evaluate what it is that you intended to create for 2024, and where you are on each one of those and the achievement of it. And all we're looking to do here is just to answer kind of a reality-based question. And it's sort of like if I'm driving from my house to Brendan's house and I got lost, and for whatever reason my maps aren't working, but I can still make phone calls, and I call Brendan and say, "Hey man, I don't know how to get to your house." The first question he's going to ask me is, "Where are you?" Well, if I can't tell him where I am relative to the goal of getting to his house, then he's not a lot of use to me, right? And so what we're asking here is, where are you relative to your goals? I think that there's also a good place to look at, what goals do I have that I'm going to keep, and what goals am I going to potentially scrap, right?
Yeah,
And
and
I'm
Jordan,
not,
on this, with that scorecard, you've got ahead, you're going to score at a 1 if you're ahead, a 2 on track, a 3 behind, and 4 hopeless. And when
yep.
I went through this exercise, I thought number 4 was a kind of harsh, right? I was like hopeless because I'm much of a like I'm always an optimist. I'm like, is that the right word? Is hopeless the right word?
I mean, hopeless is in a sense that we're so far behind that the goal is now working against us.
Gotcha.
Right.
And can you talk through that? Because I think people need to understand what that means. Because that is a very, some people get halfway through the year and they go, I wanted to close 50 deals, and you're at 10. And they go, so should I change my goal to 20 because I'm halfway through the year, or should I keep it at 50? And I
Yeah,
see people ask me that question all the time. And I know there's no easy answer, but I think
there
that's
is an
what
easy
people
answer to
struggle
that.
with.
There is actually an easy answer to that. So you didn't want to close 50, you wanted to close four a month. Can
Mm,
we agree on that? Now, if you've closed 10, right? I'm going to assume that you've not had a month that you closed four in a month, right? Now, the
right.
other thing that I'm going to ask is how many did you close last year? So if you said to me, I want to close 50 this year, and last year I closed 10,
3.
three, okay, well, I want a unicorn too, but I don't have one. And so
Right.
what you're falling victim to is the old adage of you're overestimating what you can do in a year and you're underestimating what you could do in 10. And so you've got to have macro vision and micro hustle, right? If you look at Amazon and their 10-year growth percentage year over year before COVID kind of threw a lot of things off, and it did it in the real estate industry too. Amazon's annualized percentage of growth each year was 17%. 17%, right? This is the richest man in the world, or at least he kind of pops in and out of that. And so I'm going to look back and let's make sure that this was a goal that was baked in some type of reality. Now, if we're looking forward here, one of the things that I have found to be really helpful for people, and I ripped it off from a book called How to Change by Katie Milkman, is engineering a fresh start. For many of you, the question I would be asking you is, what would we do if July 1st was January 1st? Let's just scrap this last half of what's happened. Let's forget about it. Short-term memory loss. Forget it. So if you want to close 50 a month or 50 a year, you really want to close four a month. And I'm probably going to drill down on that. What's the significance of that goal? How did you get it? Blah, 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 blah. And yet, if it's a real goal for you, then what I'm going to focus on is how quickly can we just create a four closing month? And then how do we do it again? And then how do we do it again? Right. And so that's the way I would encourage people to chunk it down, Brendan, because again, if you're at 10, you've got to close 40. Is that bringing out the best in you? Is it causing you to think at the highest level? No, then get rid of it. And let's find an approach that does. I'm just into what works and what doesn't. And there's a lot
Right.
of stuff that you'll read in books and stuff that's just a pontification of an author that was trying to look good in social media reels. It's not real. And
Right.
so
And Jordan, and
I'm
that's what I
sorry.
see. Well, no, that's what I see, Jordan, is some people that are in their first, second, third year, and we have people across the board that are in their 20th year with us, 25, is a lot of times they see the people that their first year they're doing 200 grand in GCI, we're constantly judging ourselves against that because of social media. And so what people don't realize is the same thing you're saying is it's just that boring consistency over time that creates compound interest. We're currently, our book of the month is The Psychology of Money. And that book is the perfect example of just talking about how Buffett built all of his wealth, everyone built all their wealth, how the stock market's grown over time. It doesn't go in these massive spikes and complete drops. It is just consistency over time. And I don't think people give themselves enough grace for that process. They think
Yeah,
that
and
they should just be swinging home runs without really ever hitting a ball.
you're also comparing yourself to something and you don't have the whole story.
Sure.
Right? I see this all the time. Like for a lot of the quote unquote people that you deem as so successful, if you took nine of them, sat around in a circle with them, you all wrote your biggest problem, put it on a sheet of paper, and then you got to read the other nine. For a lot of you, you would take yours back. And the Olympic trials right now are happening in track and field and all these different things. And just imagine if you were watching the 200, right? 200, they're going to run halfway around they're going to run halfway around the track. And they just had three people, right? And person one is running completely on their own, nothing on them. Person two, they put a 25-pound sandbag on their shoulders. Person three, they put a 50-pound sandbag on their shoulders. Now, if I handed you $1,000 and said, pick the worst and the first runner, and you're going to win 1,000 or lose 1,000, most of you are going to take the bet that the person that's not running with any type of sandbag is going to win that race. And see, many of you are running with sandbags and you don't even know it, and you're comparing it to people who aren't, and then you wonder why. And it just feeds into this narrative that doesn't help you and it doesn't make you any better.
I
So,
agree.
you feel your confidence, and if you want your confidence to die, then compare yourself to somebody else, because you feel great until you compare yourself, and then it's just like strychnine. It just ends. Make sense?
I agree. It does. So now we have to move on now, which we're leading into is simplify, right? So we're talking simplify instead of overcomplicate.
Yep.
And with that, George, take us through what do we got? What can we eliminate?
Yeah. So elimination is essentially asking the question of what is not serving me. And I think that it's also what is it that I've tried long enough that if it were going to work, it would have by now. Right. And so there's a little bit of art and science to things. If you've been mailing into a farm for 3 years, and in 3 years have gotten 3 listings, it's probably time to eliminate that. Right. What is it that I'm doing that isn't working? The delegation piece for most of you, this needs to start at home before it needs to start professionally. What is it that you could trade a lower rate, a lower hourly rate to have somebody else do that for you? And if you really want to know how to do that at the highest level, create what's called a not to do list and go throughout your week personally and professionally, writing down the things that you either hate doing, that you shouldn't be doing, or that you would like to figure out to have somebody else do. And there may be some things on that list that you're not able to get rid of. Lead generation is probably one of them, not at least at this stage in your career, but delegation, we typically think of it first professionally, and for most of you, it would go further to start personally.
Right.
Uh,
And Jordan, this was the biggest one for me. I was so excited to set those types of goals. Every goal that I had was to have more leverage built around me, right? When I moved from a Florida market to a Colorado market, I was like, first thing I'm going to do is make enough money to hire my first assistant. That was my primary goal because I go, if I can get that leverage around me, then I can go to the next level. I see agents all the time struggling with this where they're going, I'm just going to keep working harder and longer because if I don't do it and I have to trust someone else to do it, they screw it up. My clients will never forgive me and they go through this whole cycle of emotional distress.
yeah,
So
yeah,
people struggle with delegation. I've never seen anything like it where that's such a hard thing to get past.
yeah. That's often a symptom of hallucinated importance. You think you're more important to people than you actually are. Again, some of that is ego. And
Yeah, no one will clean my house as good as I do,
yeah,
right?
nobody's
I'm
going to
like,
mow the
then you have the
lawn like
wrong
I do.
cleaner.
Yeah. And I think most people in their early in their career, they're going to optimize for money. And then if you are clear, like this is where I am at my career, I'm clear on how much money I need personally. And now I optimize for time. The extra dollars that I make aren't going into my piggy bank. I'm looking at it like, how do I get more people to take more things off of my plate so that I have more time to do what I want? And a lot of that too, Brendan, is if you don't define enough, you'll never find it. And so you'll work yourself to death in this industry if you aren't clear on that.
I love it.
Um,
I love it. And
yeah,
then what we got, what is non-negotiable, right?
yeah. What are my standards? What are my values? I talk to agents all the time about, oh, I want more of a balanced life and balancing act. And what I always share with them is, balance is the byproduct of boundaries. What you're saying is that you haven't created a boundary. So a boundary might look like, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I quit working at 4:30. I quit working at 5 o'clock. And there's agents over the years like, well, my clients and da 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 da. I'm like, well, then your value proposition is based on your availability and not really the value that you bring. And if your value is availability, you're going to have a long, hard road. And what you need to do is engineer a value toolkit that isn't based upon your value or your availability. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. And then what can you say no in order to say yes?
Yeah. So where are you wasting your time? Like one of the things that I often look to is like, who are you going to lunch with that you shouldn't be? Who are you meeting for coffee and you shouldn't be? Another great one on this, Brendan, is if your spouse just followed you around or your partner followed you around through your day, by the end of it, would they be impressed or depressed? So that would tell you real quick what you need to start saying no to, wouldn't it? If Catherine followed you around, well, she wouldn't have to do that with you, but you get the point.
Yeah, and I think that's the struggle, right? We always talk about it. If somebody was, whether it's your significant other or a consultant following you around, what would they say, and would they think that you have a business worth selling, right? Do you have a business worth selling? So the last one on this, Jordan, because I want to keep us on time and get them to the finish line. What can I simplify? And right, that's pretty simple. I mean, so just take a few minutes, right, to just what can you simplify? But what would be an example of that?
I think what's your primary question? Like when I coach agents and look, Brendan, we've had this conversation and obviously things have changed for you, but the primary question to me of any real estate professional is how many listings do you have to take every month to hit your goal? I will
Still one
ask
of my
that
favorite
question
questions.
ad
It's still one of
nauseum.
my favorite.
It's it like I have a client right now. It took us 5 years to build the machine. But 5 years ago, I started asking her, how could you build a machine to take 20 listings a month? This is the first year that she's done it. It took us 5 years, right? And there's an old Bruce Lee quote, I don't fear the man that's practiced 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man that's practiced one kick 10,000 times. See, if I were in the real estate industry today in production and I was looking around at my competition, I don't fear the realtors that are asking 10,000 questions one time. But you show me one that's asking one question 10,000 times, that's a force to be reckoned with. And
Right.
I think that the primary question for most realtors should be, especially after the NAR settlement stuff, how many listings do you need to take every single month? And how are you going to build a machine to do it? For most of you, if you just answered this question, you would be unequivocally financially free for the rest of your life. How could I build a machine to take 10 listings a month?
Well said.
If you took 10 listings a month, you could screw up so many things in your life, so many things in your business, and you would still win. You would print money in your basement. You would have more than enough to fund your money machine. One
But
question.
the problem I find, Jordan, is as a lot of people, the people that are joining us today and the people that'll watch the recording, a lot of them don't want to go through this exercise because they like being in denial, right? These exercises are really hard for some people because when they have to write the answer and have to look at it in their face, if they're not learning based and they're not willing to make change, they get real negative about doing exercises like this. And a number one won't do it. They just go, I'm too cool for school, I won't do this. And some of you are on here listening to this right now and you're not doing the exercise because you're like, it's whatever, right? And then some will even try to kind of partially do the exercise and then make no adjustments in the second half of this year and keep doing the definition of insanity, keep doing it over and over again, and just go, I'm going to work with 10 buyers a month or try to work with, 17 buyers and see if I can get there. So what is it that makes people just flip the switch? Is there something that just gets them out of this, or is it just over
I don't know
time
that
with
there
being
is
willing
a
to be educated?
I don't know that there's a one size fits all approach. If any of you find it, please call me. I will pay you for it. Um, and yet, the question that I ask people is, do you have to learn things the hard way?
Hmm.
Do you have to learn things the hard way? And I'm not asking that as a leading question. I'm asking that from a place of sincerity, curiosity. If you do, then let's go through the failure and the pain and let's get you to the point that you break down so that you will finally figure out that that isn't going to work. If, that's the way you have to learn things, cool. There's no judgment on my part. And I'm stubborn, so I'll stick with you through the whole thing. That's fine. And yet, if you don't have to learn the hard way, then you're going to be somebody that can borrow from the wisdom of others. And if you're going to borrow from the wisdom of others, can I share with you what I've seen work and what I've seen not? And you don't have to believe me. That's okay. And it's not important that you do. Just do what I tell you to do. And if it doesn't work in 60, 90, 180 days, then you can and should fire me.
Right. Well, it
Right?
goes back to the belief, right? You got to believe,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So, whoa. All right. So just because we're running out of minutes, establish. So the E is establish a plan to achieve better results in less time. So we're going to have to fly through this one. So based on my new clarity, what is my plan for the next 6 months? So when you're writing this down, think about that. Stay ahead where I'm ahead, get ahead where I'm on target, and catch up where I'm behind. So as you're answering those four questions, what's the one thing that I can do for the next 6 months? So Jordan, summarize that for just a 30-second summary.
Yeah, I think the main thing on this, Brendan, is just the question, if you could only do one thing that would achieve your goals, what would it be?
Right.
If I could only take one action, right? What would it be? And so, you can use that in so many facets of your life. If you could only read one book out of all the books, which book would it be? And so again, it's just that the establishment of simplicity is what I
Right.
would encourage people. More is
And
less.
yeah, and some of those examples is I watch people struggle with consistency. It's going, maybe one of the goals for the next month alone is just, I'm going to be at the office 5 days a week at 8 a.m. Like, just win the little goal first of just showing up. Some of
Yeah.
us are like, oh, I'm going to make 20 contacts from home. And it's like, while the laundry's going off, you're walking the dog, it's distraction filled. There's no one there to be, around you creating that energy. So think about that. And then the last one, which is, of course, the T, time block actions that fast track extraordinary results, right? So when will I do my one thing,
Yeah. And I'll
right?
summarize this whole page for you
Yeah,
into one concept. Time blocking is just the budgeting of time. That's all it is, right? The best quote I've ever heard on a budget came from John Maxwell, and he would say that a budget is telling your money where to go rather than wondering where it went. A time block is telling your time where to go rather than wondering where it went. And so if all we're looking for here is not for you to block every hour of every day because life, business is unpredictable. And yet, win the morning, win the day. Time blocking. I've never met an agent, by the way, that can honestly look me in the face and tell me that they time blocked their one thing and followed through on it for 2 to 3 hours every single day that didn't hit their overall goal. I've never had anyone that could look me in the face and tell me that that was true. So it's not about building this perfect schedule that you have to live and follow perfectly because life is unpredictable. And yet, can you budget your time in the morning and stick to that at, 85 to 90% of the time? Even in the morning, you're not going to be perfect. But that's kind of the essence of this is telling your time where to go rather than wondering where it went.
right. And then the next one is, what are the top three things that could short circuit my focus, excuse me. And then we've got, what is the one strategy to avoid each? And then this is my favorite one, who will hold me accountable, right? Because Jordan, that's what the hardest part of this is, correct?
Yeah, and I think that accountability is a word that has gotten a bad rep over the last few years or decades, right? We think of it in terms of like this person needs to be held accountable or doing things against their will. That's not what accountability is all about.
Right.
Accountability is simply getting your audio to match your video. That's all it does. How do I get my audio and video to match? What I say and what I do are in alignment. I keep the promises I make to myself. And accountability is the bridge that converts disciplines into habits. And so, too many of you, I can promise you that this is the case. You are trying to do too much and too many things on your own. And if you would elicit the help of a group, whether that's a coach, agents in your office, Pulse, whatever it is, right? You would get further faster. You're trying to do too much on your own. You need somebody just checking in on you and getting your audio to match your video.
I love that. We can't thank you enough for your insight, your intelligence, your just overall mastery of understanding how to achieve goals, and we can't thank you enough. So hope to have you on again very, very soon. If anyone wants more information about you, Jordan, where can they find you and more information about how to connect with you?
MyFreedLife.com is our site, or find our Facebook group on Facebook, My Freed Life. Find us there.
All right. Thank you, Jordan.